Good evening, all you Star Wars fanatics. It's a great time to be a Star Wars fan. Well, every day's a great day to be a Star Wars fan in my opinion, but I don't have the kind of time necessary to make daily videos. Yet. So before I get started, I want to begin with a slight disclaimer. I am in no way jumping on the Star Wars sequel trilogy hate bandwagon. I rate all Star Wars movies between good and amazing, with The Empire Strikes Back being the latter and The Phantom Menace being the previous. Everything else falls in the middle somewhere. If you want me to do a video on my ranking of the Star Wars films, I'll do that, but it's ever changing for different reasons and I'll keep having to make new videos. It all depends on my mood, really, but I do not hate any Star Wars movie. However, I do think all the movies could use some tweaking to make them just a bit better. Today just happens to be about how I would make the Star Wars sequel trilogy better. Today, on Star Wars Fanatic. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all my Star Wars content, and jump down and high-five the like button to show your love. Yes, it helps boost my channel a little bit each time you do those things. Maybe if I had a sexier face, YouTube would boost my stuff automatically. I'm kidding. Now, let's get on with it. A lot of you will remember I talked about this subject during my live stream this past Saturday. Well, I wanted to give it a little bit more detail. That's why I'm making another video on it. I was sitting there thinking the other day about some comments I saw on other YouTube channels. Not so much bigger channels, but others about my size. There was hate going around about the sequels, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker. And the question was whether we think the sequels will age well. Then I asked myself that same question, and I thought, yes, absolutely. They're already starting to be seen in a more favorable light than they were. When The Force Awakens came out, it had mixed reviews by fans. At first, they were like, yeah, new Star Wars. Then the newness wore off, and the trolls popped out from under their bridges and began their critiques from behind the safety of their screens of their internet machines. Perfectly acceptable, right? Everyone has a right to their opinion, and this is just to illustrate the hate the movie got. Then came The Last Jedi, and right away it was met with an angry crowd. YouTubers literally loved the movie, but when their viewers gave them hate for it, they changed their opinion to appease their audience. I bet they watch it in secret and cry every time Luke Skywalker fades away. I mean, I do, but I don't have issues with enjoying the movie out in the open. Then came The Rise of Skywalker. The criticism of this one gets me the most. When The Force Awakens came out, there were many Star Wars YouTubers theorizing that Rey was a Palpatine. There were also those who said she was a Kenobi, but the biggest theory was the Palpatine theory. I didn't have a YouTube channel then, but I thought Rey a Palpatine when I saw The Force Awakens on opening day. But then The Rise of Skywalker came out, and Rey was actually a Palpatine by blood. The same people who theorized she was a Palpatine freaked out in anger. WTF! And those were the same ones who freaked out when Rey was a nobody in The Last Jedi. Now they're screaming for her to be a nobody again, after they hated that idea in the first place, after they swore she was a Palpatine. Maybe it was because she called herself a Skywalker as well. I don't know. Okay, that's a valid point though. But what would have happened if she and Ben both survived? What if they had gotten married? Do you think she would have held on to the Palpatine name or went with Solo? Well, people with no last name in our own world have a right to choose a name. I know a guy who changed his last name to Phoenix because he hated his parents so much. Is that too stolen identity? What about Han Solo not having people and the Imperial officer giving him the Solo name? Is that stolen identity? Maybe he should have remained nameless. I'm sorry, I just don't see a problem with Rey calling herself a Skywalker. Of all the problems Star Wars has run into with fans, that's the least of my priorities. Okay, back to my thought about the sequels aging well. Now that all three movies are at least 2 years old, The Force Awakens is now seen by many fans as the best of the trilogy. The hate for it being a clone of A New Hope has dissipated, and fans are regarding it a bit more highly than they had. Well, For me, it's my least favorite of the three. Not that I don't like it, I love it, but it's the least original of the three movies for me. But my point is, yes, the Star Wars sequels will age well, especially if we start getting more content leading up to them and telling stories of these characters' beginnings. Much like the Clone Wars animated series helped the prequels bring older fans back on board with Star Wars. Let's look at it in regard to the other trilogies. The original trilogy was just that, original. It had surprises, twists, no fan service because the fandom was in its infancy. Darth Vader's reveal in The Empire Strikes Back was a 3-year cliffhanger and nothing seen by the likes of any other film in cinema history. Then came the prequels. No surprises. We knew what the end result was going to be. The Jedi were going to fall, Anakin was going to turn to the dark side, Obi-Wan was going to hide Luke and go into exile on Tatooine. Yoda was going to retreat to Dagobah, and Palpatine was the Emperor. There wasn't much that wasn't predictable. Why? Because we knew the end result of the next 3 movies. Am I saying the prequels were bad? No, not at all. Just not really necessary. I'm glad we got them, but as far as storytelling, we knew what Anakin would become. Even though we shouted at him not to do it, it was predetermined. Predictable trilogy, to say the least. Be mad at me for saying this if you want to. It's fine. Now we have the sequels. A trilogy of movies that didn't have a predetermined end. They could be predictable again. And they were, for the most part. Snoke being the big bad from what we knew and being killed off in the second act was a surprise for sure. Things like dyads in the Force and the Force balancing itself were new concepts, but it isn't without flaws. Just like the other 2 trilogies, missteps are easy to yell about after we watch the films, but if you haven't wrote an original piece yourself, then I'll tell you, it's easy to miss something. I'm sure there were 1,000,001 things they did miss and fixed, but there were others they didn't catch. So what do I think would make the Star Wars sequel trilogy better? How would I have made them better? Easy fixes, but it's hard to see these things as you're writing something. We call them missed opportunities, but until you actually write something yourself, it's really hard to notice these things as you're making it. Alright, so number 1. Poe Dameron would have been related to Wedge Antilles. They hinted at what a great pilot he was all the way through The Force Awakens and even throughout the rest of the trilogy, but they never went back to it and explained why. So Wedge makes a perfect sense. 2. Finn wouldn't have been a janitor. He would have been a recent graduate into the Stormtrooper Corps. It would have made his story more compelling as to why he was defecting from the First Order. 3. Luke, Leia, Han, Chewbacca, and the droids would have been reunited for one last scene. I'm sorry, that was needed, but I get it. Sometimes in life, you never see someone you were friends with in your youth ever again. Number 4. Leia would have hugged Chewbacca after Han was killed, not Rey. She had never met Rey. That made no sense to me. Number 5. Ben would have survived long enough to have killed Palpatine himself, finishing what his grandfather Anakin started, then died. This was a Skywalker trilogy, and a blood Skywalker should have ended Palpatine, who was the main antagonist of 9 films. Then give Rey and Ben a moment to fall deeper in love before killing him off. After that, she could have claimed the Skywalker name without incident, and I don't think many fans would have been as upset about it. That's it. I don't care about Rey's name, so she felt a stronger connection to Luke and Leia than her grandfather. Do you blame her? She was in love with a Skywalker and probably would have married him. Even though his last name was Solo, he was still just as much a Skywalker as he was a Solo. The biggest thing I would change about Star Wars, though, is the fandom. Wow, it's a space fantasy with whoomp whoomp and pew pew. Yes, we love it, but it isn't important enough for me to become this negative booty hole and start harassing actors and telling them to kill themselves. It's not my thing. I'm not out tearing up toys and claiming my childhood was ruined by a science fiction movie. Look, I get it. Star Wars has been a passion of mine since 1977, but you can't take this stuff too seriously. Caring about each other and respecting one another in the real world is so much more important. But I'm way off topic. Enjoy Star Wars or hate it however you want. No judgments here. But what do you think? Would these few minor changes have made the Star Wars sequel trilogy better for you? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here or just haven't done so, go on and hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Stay up to date on all my Star Wars discussions, theories, and fan fictions. Also, hit the thumbs up really hard to show your love for the work I put into this and every video. Let's see how high YouTube will allow this video to go. Thank you for watching, and remember, this is the way, the only way.